Yes guys, welcome back to another Fantasy Football Fix YouTube video. My name is FPL Nacho, and in today's video we are taking a look at those top transfers going into game week 13. We need to take a look at those budget forwards and some differential midfielders that are on everybody's radar. So as always, if you look forward to today's video, make sure you drop a like and of course smash that subscribe button. Without further ado, let's get into today's video. So first up, I think it's really important to take a look at a couple of budget forwards that a lot of FPL managers are looking at right now. And the two that are kind of top of the agenda right now is going to be Ipswich's Delap and Brighton's Joao Pedro. Now, Joao Pedro in particular has been the man on everybody's lips, and his price rose once again to 5.6 million. I think a lot of managers right now are seeing that budget forwards are actually offering fantastic value this year at a slightly more expensive price. We've got the likes of Cunha ticking over really nicely, and we've already had in the past the likes of Chris Wood delivering, Vissa and Raul Jimenez, but it really does feel like these two are the next on the list to buy. Now, in terms of Joao Pedro, I think naturally a lot of managers are looking towards him because just come off the back of the injury, we knew historically that this was a fantastic FPL option, and we knew at its price point it fell to as low as 5.4 million at one point. We knew he was going to be on our radar, but it was when he actually came back from injury, and we saw that in game week 11 and of course in game week 12 with that goal and an assist. When we take a look at his underlying numbers over the course of the season so far, we need to remember the minutes are very limited because of the injuries that he has had. But 0.56 XG per 90 is really solid, especially when we're looking at a forward that's only 5.6 million. But the great thing about Joao Pedro is not only is he a goal scorer in this team, but he's also a chance creator. 0.36 expected assists per 90 minutes. Now, when we look at other forwards, Cunha's the only real one that comes close to him where we're looking at both a goal scoring threat and a creative asset. And the great thing about Joao Pedro is because he's getting the goals, because he's being a creative force, he's also incredible on the bonus points. 2.68 bonus points per 90 minutes is ridiculous. Now, this isn't sustainable, let's be honest. He isn't going to continue to get 2.68 bonus points per 90, but because of the way he plays, more as a 10 rather than a number 9, the bonus point system just really suits him to the ground. So while that isn't a sustainable amount, he definitely is going to be right up there in this Brighton team in terms of bonus points. Now, the comparative player that I want to look at right now is going to be Delap at the same price and at 0.46 expected goals, really going under the radar. He has been fantastic this year with 6 goals at a team that are currently in the bottom 3, an expected assist of 0.1, hence why the bonus points are less at 0.73 per 90. And this is the big thing that we need to factor in first and foremost is Joao Pedro is not only dominating in terms of the creativity, but also in terms of the bonus points. Delap's baseline bonus starts actually below 0, which basically means he has to get a goal and an assist or a brace just to pick up some bonus points in this Ipswich team, where Joao Pedro just has to get an assist and he's going to be in and amongst it. So that is one big factor we need to consider when looking at these two players. Now, when we take a look at the fixtures, because fixtures are king end of the day, Brighton's we knew were basically from game week 12 onwards. That was an added bonus, but game week 13 with Southampton at home really does look like the money fixture, followed by Fulham away, Leicester away and Crystal Palace at home. Those 4 in isolation are probably as good as they can get. But of course, some caveats. Leicester are now going to have either a new manager or at least an interim manager in charge, so we could see a slight uptick in Leicester as a team. And Crystal Palace may start to click under Glasner after a torrid start to the season. Now, when we take a look at Ipswich's fixtures, I would actually argue they're just as good as Brighton's. Forest away will be a tricky fixture, but we've seen Ipswich can do the job on the road like we saw against Spurs. Then Crystal Palace at home and Bournemouth at home. They need to win these 2 home games to have a chance of staying up in this Premier League. It really is important for them. And then Wolves away in game week 16, who, regardless of what you think about them, are always going to give up chances to the opposition. So I would say the fixtures are very, very even. I'd probably argue the minutes are quite similar as well. While Joao Pedro is absolutely the main man in this Brighton team, with so many attacking talents available, I do think with the busy Christmas period, we will still see some early substitutions for Joao Pedro. But all in all, I think Joao Pedro is still the man. I do like the alternative of going for a Delap, but because of those bonus points, I just think we're going to continually see Joao Pedro pick up the odd bonus, 2 bonus, and that is where the real difference is going to be between a Joao Pedro and the Delap over this Christmas period. So I wouldn't overthink it. Joao Pedro is your man, and you absolutely should be looking to start him in your Game Week 13 team. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section. Next up, let's take a look at some differential midfielders that after a brilliant Game Week 12 are now on our radar. So the 3 players I want to isolate right now are going to be players that I would argue haven't been on the radar in the opening 12 game weeks. Now, we're looking at players between basically 4.5 million and 6.5 million. And we have had these players stand out before. We've got Rodgers, who has been there since game week 1. We've had Semenyo, who has been absolutely fantastic. And then we've had a sprinkling of other midfielders along the way. But this could be the next crop to emerge. So Amad Diallo, first and foremost. It is worth noting a very difficult player for us to actually gain any information on because he's been in and out that Man United team, and importantly, they now have a new manager in Amorim who's going to be playing a completely different system. We don't have any guarantees whether Amad is going to be an absolute starter in that team, but what we saw in game week 12 was promising viewing. Amad playing as a right wing back in the system, which was quite surprising. But I think a lot of people do think that Amad Diallo is actually quite well set for those dual 10 positions behind the forward. We might actually see Amad Diallo operating where Bruno Fernandes did in game week 12. So that is one to monitor right now. And it's worth noting that if you do invest in Man United, you're just generally taking a risk in itself. But at 4.9 million, we absolutely need to have Amad Diallo on our radar. 2.21 shots per 90 is probably the outstanding number. But again, I can't really look at these underlying numbers because we have nothing to go off while it was under Ten Hag's reign. So the only thing we can really look at for Man United is the upcoming fixtures. And Everton at home is a brilliant fixture in isolation. I do think we will see a positive result from Man United in that game. But after that, Arsenal away, Forest at home, Man City away, it just doesn't feel like the right time to be touching any Man United assets right now. I do think the luxury of Amad Diallo is you could easily play him in game week 13, bench him in the Arsenal game, bench him in the Man City game, and then play him in the Forest game. So because of that price point, you never really feel inclined that you have to start him each and every game week. And that is one thing that we do need to take into consideration. Now, in terms of the other assets available to us, Kulusevski at the more expensive price of 6.3 million. And it's really been a case right now where all the Spurs players have been ticking over as good options. We've had Solanke at one point. We've had the premium of Son at one point. We've had Maddison, who's actually the 5th highest scoring midfielder, would you believe? And of course, Brennan Johnson. But it always feels like Kulusevski is the one that goes under the radar. We never really highlight him as an FPL pick. And when I look at the underlying numbers right now, I would probably suggest this is why. 0.18 expected goals per 90 is not amazing viewing, and 0.3 expected assists per 90. So just for comparison, Joao Pedro, we looked at in the previous slide, is like 0.8, 0.7 cheaper than Kulusevski, and you're getting a player who has a much more higher expected goals and a higher expected assists. So we do need to understand that, even though we are looking at different positions. But shots per 90 again at 1.71 just isn't a player that screams huge returns each and every game week. And in terms of the fixtures coming up, I think Spurs actually have good fixtures. Fulham at home, Bournemouth away, even Chelsea at home isn't a terrible fixture, and then Southampton away. So I think Spurs attack, you always do want to have a piece of it, but because it is spread out so much in that team and we can't really understand who the talisman is in that side, even though Kulusevski had a fantastic game week 12, I just don't think we can confidently invest in Kulusevski. Now, last up, the one that I want to look at is going to be Matoma, 6.4 million. So again, we need to compare him also to his Brighton teammate in Joao Pedro. He is a forward, but he is more expensive compared to Joao Pedro. 0.35 expected goals per 90, 0.23 expected assists. Really good underlying numbers. And we know Mitoma has been a decent FPL asset at times, but I would question his output. He looks great on the eye, a brilliant player, but his goal scoring numbers haven't been amazing. And at 6.4 million, it is putting him in a competitive price bracket here where we start to think to ourselves, I want a player that I have to play each and every game week and I can confidently have in my team. When I look at the fixtures, we've touched on these, they are brilliant. But because we have such an amazing price point in Joao Pedro, I just can't really sit here and say, go for Mitoma over Joao Pedro. And that is the big problem with Mitoma. You're always going to have Joao Pedro at a cheaper price available to you. So for that reason, I think all three of these can offer value to you, but I think I'd actually avoid all of these a little bit controversially. And I think the one that I would look to buy maybe would be Amad Diallo if you were looking to go for a 3-4-3 setup and then have a fifth midfielder that can sit on your bench and come in sporadically into your teams. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. Last up, I want to touch on the big boys who have been actually causing the biggest FPL swing we have seen in a long, long time. Now, of course, I am talking about the Norwegian robot Erling Haaland and the Egyptian king Mo Salah. And I really do feel sorry for those managers that have had Erling Haaland over the last 3 game weeks. The data that we have up on the screens right now is based on per 90 minutes over the course of the season. But when we actually look at the last 3 game weeks in isolation, because a lot of managers made a decision in game week 10 whether to go for Mo Salah, Erling Haaland, neither or both. It really was quite a sliding doors moment in game week 10. And over those last 3 game weeks, we have seen 9 points scored for Erling Haaland and 36 for Mo Salah. It is just a huge swing in points. When we look at the underlying numbers as well, you just think to yourself, well, at least Mo Salah's underlying numbers have been incredibly better than Haaland's. Well, it couldn't be further from that. 3.77 expected goals for Mo Salah over the last 3 games, 4.18 for Haaland. So Haaland's put up the better numbers, but in those underlying numbers, Salah's actually outperformed and scored 4 goals, while Haaland's only scored 1. So if you're one of those managers right now that has had Erling Haaland, I think you just have to say you've been unlucky over this period. But I do think maybe moving off him is the time to do so. The reason I've put this up here is because I'm not necessarily sitting here saying that you have to go one or the other, but when we look at the underlying numbers, it's clear that Erling Haaland is always going to be top for the data and always going to be one of the top captaincy picks, apart from this week where he's obviously going to play Liverpool. And I think that's the big thing that we need to get over, the fear factor of Erling Haaland. Not having Erling Haaland is terrifying. I haven't had him for the last 3 game weeks, and I feel incredibly lucky that he hasn't delivered. And we're going to get to a point where he is going to go on a big run and he is going to score a lot of points. But the big thing we need to remember is that it's the combination of players that you can allow yourself in your FPL teams. So while Erling Haaland might score, the saving that you may have made by downgrading him to some of these amazing value forwards that we do have in the game, hence a Joao Pedro, for example, or someone even more premium like an Alexander Isak or a Nicholas Jackson, that combination where we go for the cheaper forward and allow ourselves maybe double premium midfield, I just think right now is the best use of your money in the game. But if you do have Erling Haaland right now, I think it's very difficult to hold because game week 13 does not look good away against Liverpool. Then they have Nottingham Forest at home, followed by Palace away and Man United at home. I think the glimmer of hope, of course, is the return of Kevin De Bruyne, which really could enhance Erling Haaland, and that is kind of the last straw, really. If they don't improve with De Bruyne back in the team, then I really do start to panic on this Man City team. So I'm not really sitting here saying that you have to buy one of these 2. I just wanted to kind of highlight the fact that whichever way you've been, if you've been Mo Salah, you've probably been a little bit lucky, and if you've got Haaland, you've been a bit unlucky. But we see in the numbers now, both are fantastic picks, and Haaland is always going to hurt you. But I do think going without Erling Haaland is probably the best use of your money right now going into game week 13. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section. And no, I do not think it is too late to buy Mo Salah. I still think he is a fantastic pick for your teams. So finally coming into game week 13 predicted points courtesy of Fantasy Football Fix, and this part of the video here is all about captaincy because we are just looking at the predicted points for 1 game week in isolation. And I actually think game week 13 is a really interesting game week for captaincy where I predict we are going to get a bit of a split and a division in the community about which player is the best to go for. Now, because Man City are playing Liverpool, I think if you own Erling Haaland, it's a very tough ask to captain him based on what we've seen recently. And I do think Mo Salah, with what we've seen, is a good captaincy option, but it still doesn't feel amazing doing it against an opponent like Man City. So when we take a look at the underlying numbers in terms of predicted points going into game week 13, Cole Palmer actually tops the list. The player that is blanked in the last three, 7.6 predicted points. And I do think with this Aston Villa defence, and it's worth noting, are going to be featuring in the Champions League, I think there is an opportunity here for Cole Palmer to be a brilliant captaincy pick. So when we look at the other options, I think Vissa's minutes are a little bit ropey. 6.3 predicted points is fantastic, and they do have a great fixture at home against Leicester. But with them getting rid of Cooper, we could see a slight improvement in Leicester, whether it be a new manager bounce or just an interim manager getting something more out of those players. So even though the predicted points are good, I don't know if I'm that confident right now on Vissa's minutes and in terms of Mbeumo's output against this Leicester team. So I think Palmer is quite clear of those Brentford assets, and the predicted points do suggest that. Salah is there much more ahead of the likes of Erling Haaland. And I still think someone like a Bukayo Saka will remain a great pick if you want to go there at 5.8 predicted points. Outside of that, we got Son at 5.1, Bruno Fernandes at 5.1, and Nicholas Jackson at 4.8. But based on this, Cole Palmer is the standout pick. And if I had to put my captaincy on one right now, it probably would be Cole Palmer. But let me know your top captain in the comments section. And as always, if you did enjoy today's video, please do consider dropping a like and of course smashing that subscribe button for all the rest of the content that is going to be coming out later on this week. Have an amazing day, take care, and I'll see you real soon. Cheers.